Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to this meeting tonight, which is, as you can see, just more or less 24 hours after the height of activity between our forces and our enemies. And I'm delighted that we can present an immediate response. And I thank our team at the Jerusalem Institute of Brigadier General Yossi Kuperwasser and Colonel Eran Lerman and Colonel Gabi Siboni and Major General Yaakov Amidror for being available, and Adi for organising it as always. This is going to be the quickest response in a time of crisis, and the idea is to inform us to the best of our ability. As for me, I'm going to check myself. I'm flying to Israel tomorrow to visit our friends at Jerusalem Institute, to visit family and to be in Israel and to be part of what's going on. So I'll be reporting back from Israel within days if required. And now, without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to Yossi to open up proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you for everybody for joining in such a short notice. We've been experiencing two strange days in Israel ever since the Iranians decided to come through on their threat to hit Israel with their missiles if we do anything against Beirut, against the Dahia, southern suburb of Beirut. And we had some exchange of fire with the Iranians. And while everybody was speaking about a few days of skirmish, we actually ended up after less than 24 hours because of the intervention of the President of the United States, who made it clear that he would like us to stop. And even though further attacks were planned and pilots were underway to the cockpit of their airplanes, we had to stop, and that's where we stand today. We would like to listen to three experts of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security analyzing the situation. Where are we going from here? And we'll take maybe advantage of the fact that we have them with us also to analyze some other matters, like the situation in Lebanon, of course, it's part of it, and the situation in Gaza, to say a few words about that as well. And we'll open it to questions so that people can ask questions. We are not such a big group, so it's going to be possible to do that.
Thank you, Yossi. So what we have seen yesterday is a result of what the United States has created. What the United States has created, the beginning of the ceasefire, is a linkage between Lebanon and Iran. This was the 100% doing of Trump, which he, if you recall, as the ceasefire started, the sentiment was that Lebanon is out of the ceasefire and we can continue working in Lebanon, taking Hezbollah. However, and this was supported also by some of the American officials. So once the linkage was created, which in my view was a big mistake by the United States, and it was, of course, under the pressure of the Iranians, which were in a very dire straits condition, but they made their claim. And Trump, with I don't want to use very bad words, but it was terrible. He created the linkage, and he asked us to stop bombarding in Lebanon, at least in the depth of the country. So this gave a lot of appetite to the Iranians, and created a linkage which was, I can't understand, completely not the interest of the United States, not within the interest of Israel, only with the interest of Hezbollah and Iran. And what we've seen yesterday was a result of this linkage. And the Iranians then gained more appetite and said, well, if you start to bombard in the depth of Lebanon, they meant, okay, now it was the Dahiya quarter in Beirut, then we will retaliate in Israel. And that's what happened. So we had to, as a result, I think that Israel had to respond in Iran. And then, okay, again, Trump with this, I must say, I'm not being politically correct. I don't think the guy is 100% with us. I don't understand his consideration. I don't understand how he works. I lost the understanding of his logic. So he woke up and said, okay, please, everybody fired enough and let's stop and go back to discussions or whatever he's doing with the Iranians. So that's the background of yesterday. Now, talking about the agreement, it's being, I don't know, maybe structured now as we speak with Iran. In my understanding, as of Israeli interest, and of course, as I see the American interest, but let's say I'm not an American, I can't really be 100% right about the American interest. But as I look at the Israeli interest, any agreement with the Iranians that will provide them with ability to recover, to restructure their capabilities with money they will get, with let's say the lifting of sanctions, with the ability to export petroleum again, is regardless of that, it's this regime will continue, will recover. Trump will be out of office. Netanyahu will be out of office, I don't know, in a few years, and then they will start all over again. So we will start over again. And we know how the Iranians, they will manage to find ways to start all over again. Even if we will manage to take the enriched uranium, whatever the Americans are trying to take out of Iran. And of course, another big flaw of this agreement, I assume, will be the linkage with Lebanon. So if there is let's say, permanent or stopping of hostilities, I don't know how they will define it in their wording, that will stop the hostilities in Iran, it will be, of course, because the Americans have already made the linkage between Iran and Lebanon, it will reflect, of course, with Lebanon, and we will be stuck again with Hezbollah gaining and restructuring their force. So it will take us to square one, and I think it's going to be a very big challenge, and if such an agreement will be signed. In my view, the way in the past and even now, I just hope yesterday that it was coordinated with the Americans, the Israeli attack, and that we will get some kind of freedom to further attack Iran. In my view, the main bottleneck that we have is that we did not destroy the Iranian economy in a way that it will take them decades to recover. And it will prevent them with the ability to refuel again their arm in Lebanon. So this blockade that is being put now is not enough. I think that this gives the Iranians hope and, of course, stamina to be able to withstand the situation until they can get to some kind of agreement with the US and recover themselves. If we, in the past, and even if there is a chance these days, I don't know what's going on between the discussion between Israel and the United States, to attack again and destroy anything that provides money to this regime, anything, industry. At the beginning, there was a vision that we will keep the Iranian economy to maybe for the next regime that will come, maybe, that was hope of some of us. But now I think that even during the fighting, that I advocated that we should have been attacking Iranian economy, destroying all Iran economy. Okay, the industry, petroleum, whatever is providing the regime with money to pay or to maintain the country, and that will probably will have a chance to increase internal resistance and do some kind of regime change. In my view, only the solution to Iran is only a regime change. There is no other solution. If this regime stays, we are going to face the same problem in 5 years, 10 years, maybe 20 years, I don't know. And people have told me that, well, that Iranian will retaliate by attacking the Gulf states. They will take petroleum, whatever. If you want to, if someone wants to blackmail you and you pay, then you'll be blackmailed again. I'm saying that I don't accept this kind of equation, and we should attack Iran in the most fierce way to destroy its economy, and whatever they have left, okay, they will do whatever they can, and we will protect ourselves the best way we can. But I think the outcome of what we are seeing today is I wrote in JISS, I wrote an article a few weeks ago saying that the Iranian regime is doomed. But that's, of course, because the effect of what happened is terrible to Iran. But that was under the assumption that no money is going to be funneled again. No, billions of dollars are going to be funneled again to recover. If they recover, well, we are going to go to square one. But and I think now that the Israeli interest is to try to convince the US to go through this and to relaunch, which is very difficult, the campaign, I guess, because there are many interests countering interests all over, with the US to relaunch this attack and to get to a position where Iran will be busy for decades, whatever regime, with this regime at least, to try to recover and to rebuild themselves. It will take them decades to do it. And this is it, Yossi. If you will,
thank you, Gabi. Thank you.
These are my
Very
points.
clear point. Very clear opinion and recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll go now, hopefully, to Amidror. That I hope now you unmute yourself, Amidror, so we should be able to hear you.
I must say I'm less pessimistic than my previous colleague. First of all, what we succeeded to achieve. The idea of the Iranians to build ring of fire around Israel, to use it to kill Israel when Iran is far away, decide when to use its missiles, does not exist anymore. Hamas is not relevant. We killed the head of Hamas in Gaza. No one heard a word from Gaza. They cannot launch rockets or missiles or ground operation against Israel. They are now in 40% of the strip, and we are eroding their capabilities slowly but surely. The Hezbollah is another story. They suffered huge blow. We succeeded to destroy between 2/3 to 75% of their capabilities, but they had huge capabilities before that, so 24% of their capabilities is a big number, more than Hamas had at the beginning of the war. But the most important issue is the disability of Iran, with all the nice words, to rebuild Hezbollah. The land bridge which led from Tehran to the Mediterranean does not exist anymore. The ability of the Iranians to use the Syria as a hub does not exist anymore. The willingness of the Syrians to produce for Hezbollah weapon systems and to provide it with as a backyard of the organization does not exist anymore. Hezbollah today is isolated inside Lebanon. Pressure from Syria in one side, pressure from Israel on the other side. Inside Lebanon, they are losing a lot of support. If you want to understand here, please take what was said by Jumbalat, the leader of the Druze. He is the most sensitive censor in Lebanon when it is coming to balance of power within the state. It's the first time after many years that he spoke against Hezbollah. The meaning of it, he feels that Hezbollah is not as strong as it was. And we have negotiations under in Washington, and the Lebanese government is very strong in words, no deeds, in words against Hezbollah. So I think that the ability of the Iranians to rebuild Hezbollah is almost zero. They can bring money, and Hezbollah will have money to pay for the damage of the Shiite communities, which is huge, and now they're complaining because the Hezbollah doesn't have the money to pay. But to rebuild it as a military organization, it's only almost zero. So we have to put our priorities in a way that we understand the ability of the other side really to be a threat. And the ability of Hamas is zero, and the ability of Hezbollah is not zero. It is still very strong organization, much weaker than it had, and every missile that they are launching is going out of their storages, and they don't have a way to add another one because they are inside Lebanon in a weak position, and relating to the Syrians and Israel, they are in a weak position within Lebanon. So someone has to mute himself. So we have to be very careful when we are speaking to give the real measurement to the threat that we are facing. I agree that the Americans made a big mistake when they gave the Iranians the impression, I don't know if it was agreed or that's impression, I don't know. The impression that they agreed to connect the ceasefire in Iran with the ceasefire in Lebanon. And what we are doing now, when we speak, by attacking Hezbollah in Lebanon forcefully, is to make clear there is no any connection. The Americans can continue to discuss the issue with the Iranians, and we are continue to fight Hezbollah in Lebanon. And Gabi knows it better than anyone else that when you cross the ridge of the Beaufort, you are above Nabatea, and then geographically you are in much better position to continue the war north of the Litani, if you decide. And what we are doing now in Sor and other places is to bomb all the facilities, all the targets which had been identified by our intelligence, and to make the move of the ground forces easier if we decide to do it. There is no decision yet. Relating to what happened, I think that the mistake of the Iranians, that they thought that they can dictate Israel what to do in Israel because of the negotiation between the Americans and Iran will not react. I think that our reaction, which was not too big, but as you know, we had some restrictions because of the Americans, made it clear to the Iranians, guys, you can defend the Shiites in Lebanon if you want. You can defend your proxy. The idea was that the proxy will do the war for you. Now you are doing the war for the proxy. 180% from the strategy of Iran. And Iran will pay with Iranian currency. Because we are not going to attack the Dakhia, we are going to attack Tehran. And that, I believe, well understood now. It was agreed in a tough negotiation with the Americans, that should be done with the limitations that the Americans put on the table. And I think that now we are continuing the war in Lebanon, and I don't hear any voice from Iran. Let's see what will happen. About the conditions in Lebanon, the Americans put on the table, because of the mistake that they did in the negotiation with the Iranians, kind of equation, saying, Hezbollah will continue to fight, but Hezbollah cannot attack Israel. And because of that, Israel will not attack the Dahya and maybe other targets deep in Lebanon. From our point of view, it's a restriction that is making the war more complicated. It's not unlike people in Israel are saying, if we destroy 10 buildings or 100 buildings in the Dahya, that will lead Hezbollah to stop launching rockets and missiles and drones against us. It doesn't work like that. But it's better if you have freedom of action in Lebanon, and we don't have full freedom of action in Lebanon, we have to admit. We have some restrictions. But the fact that we are now continue the war against Hezbollah and bombing many, many targets with many noises, including publications about it, and including the fact that the IDF spokesman is calling to evacuate areas in South Lebanon and center of Lebanon. I think it's very important because it is making clear to the Americans, and more important to the Iranians, guys, you have to make a decision. You want to pay with Iranian currency, you can attack Israel, but that will not save Hezbollah, and you will pay, unlike your wish, with Iranian currency. In the future, of course, if everything that Gabi said could be done, it's fantastic. But this is a la la land. It's not connected to the reality of the world. It is not going to happen. The Americans will not let us to do it. And it's not the interest of America that will happen. The big question is how far the Americans will compromise with the Iranians in the negotiation. I'm a graduate of the previous negotiations during the Obama administration, and I was surprised by the inability of the Americans to use the cards that they had then. Today, the Americans have even better cards. The blockade on Hormuz, the fact that Israel and America made Iran much weaker, the breaking of the taboo, who will attack Iran. We show everyone that we can attack Iran, the American can attack Iran, and both together we can attack Iran. So they have very good cards. I don't know what will happen in the negotiation. What happened relating to Lebanon is a very bad example of how not to negotiate. But I hope that the Americans will recover from the mistake that they did regarding Lebanon and will be tougher in the negotiation with the Iranians. And we have to remember there is a very big problematic point in the negotiations. The Americans didn't put on the table the issue of the ballistic missiles. It is only about the enriched uranium. I hope it is not only the 450 kilogram of the high enriched uranium, but all the enriched uranium which still exists in Iran, and about the future, how you prevent Iran from resuming enrichment in the future. And if I have to be a prophet about the future, Israel doomed to have another big operation in Iran. I don't know if it is in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, but this regime is not going to forget the dream of destroying Israel in different conditions. They don't have the proxies. They are much weaker. But it is there, and I agree with Gabi. The only solution is to change the regime. I don't know how to do it. By the way, I'm not sure that by destroying their economy, you bring the opposition to a better position to take responsibility of Iran. I'm not sure about it. One last remark. Look, the best example for very bad diplomacy in the modern history is the success of North Korea to become nuclear. One of the reasons that the Americans didn't use force to stop them, there are few reasons, but one of them was the view of South Korea, which was forcefully against using force against North Korea, because they understood that whatever will be the solution, the situation, this Seoul will be destroyed. The Iranians are succeeding slowly to build Korean situation in the Gulf. As Gabi said, what they are saying clearly, if you do something to Iran, we destroy the Gulf countries. And the Gulf countries are those who are preaching to the Americans, don't. The truth is that it is not the whole story. Under the table, those countries are saying to the Americans, if you are going to do it to the end. Finish with this regime. Destroy them all totally. If you don't do it, don't put us, the Gulf countries, in a very dire situation. Because if you go the halfway, at the end of the day, we will pay the price. And in a way, the Iranians succeeded to make Korean situation in the Gulf because the Americans are not ready to go the extra mile and totally destroy Iran. Why? Good question. I'm not the one to answer it. The American experts should answer it. And this is the problem that we are facing relating to the position of the Gulf countries regarding the war against Iran. Their view is do it totally destroying Iran or don't do it. And totally destroying Iran is not on the table. So it's a very complicated situation. And yes, we are taking into account the American point of view. I'll finish my part in a story which will give you better understanding of the situation, I hope. I have two friends with very nice startups. A year and a half ago, Google approached both of them and said, we want to be partners in your startups. They both agree. All the friends, we made a nice evening celebrating the fact that both our friends have now relations with Google. But after a year, in the last half year, both of them understood that when Google is your partner, Google has what to say in the startup. And both of them didn't like the situation in which they're losing full control of the startup. And they took two different ways when they understood it. One of them said, Amidror, I'm getting rid of Google, I'll continue by myself. The other friend told me, Amidror, I'm staying with Google, I'll find ways how to handle the situation within the startup with Google. We, year and a half ago, got Google with us. And if someone thinks that when Google is your partner, you can neglect Google, I think you are making a big mistake. But you have to make a decision, strategic one. Do you want to continue with Google and to have that you need some flexibility here? Or you say, okay, I'll continue alone without Google. All my friends who are in the business, which I gave them the example, told me that they would make the decision. If they will have to make the decision, they will stay with Google. This is the situation of Israel today. We are with Google, and we have to take into consideration that Google is our partner.
Yes. Thank you, Amidror. We understand the difficulty of and the frustration that goes along with being a partner of Google.
And the benefits.
And the benefits, yes, and the benefits. The question is, to what extent can you affect the policy of Google? And that's
in the startup. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I agree.
Let's go to the expert on Google.
I'm not the expert on Google, although I have some family connections there, but and nobody is an expert on Donald J. Trump for the simple reason that he is what they call in good old language a protean force. He's on all places at once. He may speak about obliterating the Iranian civilization one day, and then we find him talking about having a meeting with Mujtaba Khamenei as if that wretched remainder of a person is a legitimate leader. The full range of his sentiments maybe a deliberate way of confusing the enemy. I don't know if you've seen this joke about based on the famous saying by Sun Tzu, know thyself and know thy enemy, will not lose 100 battles. And the Trump version is, if you don't know what you're doing, the enemy doesn't either. So basically we find ourselves sometimes really at a loss, as Gabi said, to understand what was the divine logic behind some of his decisions. Let me try and make some suggestions as best I can, given that tomorrow he may flip again. First of all, I think, and that's a very troubling observation, I think he has given up on a notion that may not have been very much there even to begin with, of real regime change in Iran. He has accepted the present political reality that has been generated by the results of our operations in February and March, namely the decapitation of the Ayatollah's regime and the creation of what is now effectively an IRGC regime in Iran. And he is working with this regime as a fact of life. That may be very troubling. It certainly should be troubling for the people of Iran who have been slaughtered in January by the tens of thousands. But it is where it is. And we saw to some extent a precursor of this in his intervention in Venezuela, where he did get rid of Maduro, but then he saw basically America's interest in stating as a leader Maduro's right-hand woman, who basically is as bad as Maduro in terms of what she has been doing to the people of Venezuela, but she's willing to do business. So this transactional attitude, I think, now colors the way he's thinking and working vis-a-vis the present political setup in Iran. I would probably suggest that the way he's conveyed this message actually convinced the IRGC leadership that America is weak and unwilling to take decisive action. And this is what led to the arrogant posture, even very recently, not only the attack on Israel, but also the adamant demand that the US should pay up that $12 billion up front before anything goes further in the negotiations, putting off everything that's of real importance, including the nuclear issue, to the later stages when America's tools of influence will have been gone already. All of this, I think, has been read by the Iranians in a very different way than he intended, but he's trying has convinced himself to some extent that he does have a decisive leverage. He does have decisive leverage over the Iranians in the shape of the siege, the blockade of Iranian ports, of Iranian exports. He's repeated this again in the last 24 hours in a very forceful manner. He believes, and that's not a trivial statement. He believes that this is a better tool, a better lever on the people with whom he is dealing in Tehran. And as I said, he's dealing with whatever hand there is on the till there. He doesn't try anymore to bring about regime change. But he thinks he has this effective lever, and this effective lever is better than active attack on Iranian targets, more kinetic measures, as we say in military terms, and that ultimately it is this tool that will bring Iran to its knees, to bring America the victory that he's seeking. And for some reason, he believes that this can be done within days or a couple of weeks. I have no reason to believe that this is anything more than mere speculation. But he certainly believes that this is his tool, and therefore he looked upon the Israeli-Iranian eruption as a disruptive element, and this is why he also accepted, tragically, the linkage that Gabi spoke to, namely that Lebanon was thrown in. I think there's an added element there. He has a personal angle on the Lebanese issue. I would say even a family angle. He looks upon Lebanon now as a state, not Hezbollah, but Lebanon as a state, as a kind of American protege, a country, a poor little country that America needs to defend. He looks upon Israeli-Lebanese negotiations as another achievement in his list of breakthroughs towards peace around the world. We may be cynical about it, but that's his mindset. That's his list of 10 such breakthroughs since he took power. Most of them have not ended the wars that they were supposed to end, but not in Ukraine and not elsewhere. But he still thinks in such terms. And so on the Lebanese question, in addition to what the Iranians have been pushing for, there's also this element. I would add another troubling angle from which I think again reflects to some extent a personal influence on Trump's decision making. That is that his man in Ankara is very close to him and very influential. It's pushing very much the Erdogan's agenda in Washington rather than Washington's agenda in Ankara. And that involves also a way of looking at the Syrian regime rather than Israel, for example, as the potential key player in the Lebanese equation. He is actually actively toying with this idea in public, bringing the Syrians into the Lebanese, the present Syrian regime into the Lebanese equation. This may be very bad news for Hezbollah, but it is not necessarily good news for Israel from our perspective. So there are personal influences swirling around Trump, which we need to be mindful of. And frankly, we need to build our own counter-influences in Washington. For example, with the old Republican guard and in Congress, so as to neutralize some of these tendencies. There is another element that has come in the last few days, which I think is also troubling, and we need to figure out here in Israel how to manage this. I think Trump has been stung by the accusations of the MAGA elements and others that he's been dragged into this by Netanyahu, that he's been led by the nose, that somehow Israel drove America into this situation rather than the other way around. We know that this is not the case. We know that this war is the result of close understanding, coordination between our two military establishments, the relationship with CENTCOM that goes back to by the way, to a decision that Trump made in his first term of office, Biden implemented, and now we have this extremely close, intimate relationship with CENTCOM, which is good for us and good for America. all of these are things that are obvious to us, but they're not obvious to elements of the American public. And Trump is very sensitive to this accusation. So he has made it a point to actually disown to disprove these terms, these accusations that he's been dominated by Israel in this situation. And by putting a deliberate public distance between him and Netanyahu, and openly admitting the language that abusive language that he used in one of their conversations, I think that's an indication that while he is quite decisive in shutting off the MAGA element, the anti-Israeli, the anti-Semitic element in the MAGA landscape. He intervened directly in the Kentucky primaries in a way that I think we should be grateful for. But nevertheless, he is affected by this music, and has responded to it. So we are in a delicate situation. Everything hinges on whether or not the Iranians will come through with something that Trump feels that he can present to the American people as an achievement, as something which is better, significantly better than the Obama deal of 2015. And here is the one ray of light in this darkening landscape, because I do think that despite all the miscalculations and the various pressures from all directions, and even despite what General Amidror said, which is very significant about the Korean equivalent, the South Korean equivalent emerging in the Gulf, I think that the experience Trump had, and we've heard this from people quite directly, by the way, here at JISS, we heard this from Ed Luttwak, I think, who spoke firsthand with Trump on this. The experience of trying to get this young punk in Pyongyang, Kim Jong-un, to give up on his nuclear project during Trump's first term of office, the way he treated this despicable human being as an equal and everything, in order to get him to deliver, and of course nothing happened, has taught him that these kind of regimes have to be stopped before they have the bomb. And on this, I think he's been very consistent. And so, at least on this question, I don't think he's going to let go. And if the Iranians have managed to convince themselves through American miscalculations, and maybe through the way they read even the latest round in the last 24 hours or 48 hours, if they convince themselves that they can get Trump to sign on to something that does not include a clear Iranian concession on the practical aspects of the nuclear project, not just a statement about nuclear weapons, but the actual procedure for delivering the enriched uranium. The 440 kilos for sure. More than that, I think, is up for, is also at least will need to be subject to very strict inspection regime. But if they do not deliver on this because they feel that they have the upper hand at this present situation, then they are making a severe mistake. And if that is the case, we will be back to kinetic measures in the not too distant future. So that's the one element in all of this, which I think remains constant. Either they actually give him something which is distinctly better than the deal Obama struck, or we may go back to square one.
Thank you, Eran. Let me say a few words of myself about the situation. Well, I think all our feelings of frustration are justified. When we entered this war, we had greater expectations. But at the same time, we have to be realistic about what can be achieved with the kind of limitations we took upon ourselves when we entered the war. We decided, and everybody is on the same page in this respect, there are not going to be any boots on the ground. And there are limitations of what you can achieve through air power by itself. Unlike what we are doing in southern Lebanon, when we did use boots on the ground and created a new reality on the ground as we did in Gaza, in Iran, we don't do that. And we don't mean to do that. The Americans have no intention to do that. So there are limits of what you can achieve through the use of air power. And we have achieved quite a lot of what can be achieved while you use only air power. And there's a question mark about whether we are going to use it in order to do more damage to the Iranians, as Gabi suggested. That's on the discussion table. We can do that. We almost did it yesterday. In the last minute, it was stopped before we took off. But it's definitely within our capability. And one thing is clear. Whatever can be done through air power, we are able and willing to do. It's, when it comes to Israel. But we have a partner, and we have to listen to the partner because the partner is bigger than us, and we depend on this partner, as Amidror clearly portrayed the situation. And we have to realize that if this partner is focused on reaching an agreement because of all kinds of reasons that have to do with his own calculations, the midterm elections, the Mondial, his birthday, whatever. And he believes that he can get a deal that would be, as Eran said, better than the one Obama did, considerably better. For that to happen, he has to take into account the Israeli expectations of such a deal. And I think we have to work hard in order to clarify to the Americans that we should be on the same opinion about what needs to be included in this deal. When we say that Iran is not going to be able to produce nuclear weapons, we speak about making sure that Iran doesn't have highly enriched uranium, not even to 3.67%, which is 50% of the way to having military grade 90% enriched uranium. We have to make sure that Iran does not enrich uranium on its own territory. And we have to make sure that the monitoring and verification of this is being done properly. And can be done anytime, anywhere, without any limitations. These are things that have to be part of the deal, so that we shall be able to say that we got something in this context of preventing Iran from having the capability to produce nuclear weapons. The JCPOA didn't provide this. The New Deal must be able to provide that. Without it, this was a mistake. This entire endeavor was a mistake. If we manage to get that, then the endeavor makes sense. Now, of course, Gabi is right that as long as we keep the regime in place, we are doomed to face another attempt of the Iranian regime to use this availability of funds in order to regain its capabilities and to threaten Israel and so on and so forth. But a lot of damage has already been done to the Iranian assets, both in Iran and when it comes to its proxies. And the real reason that the Iranians went all the way to resume the hostilities towards Israel and launching missiles towards us was not because there was a linkage between Lebanon and Iran. It was because their proxy in Lebanon is under an existential threat. In their mind, in their view, Hezbollah is facing an existential threat for all the reasons that Amidror spoke about. No Syria, no ability to rearm, the animosity towards it inside Lebanon, the freedom of action that Israel got with some limitations, but still in southern Lebanon and even beyond, we have the capability to operate freely. And we have to remember, we are now controlling the 10 kilometers along our border with Lebanon, preventing Hezbollah from launching direct fire towards our communities along the border and from using anti-tank missiles against those targets. as they did in the beginning of this war in 2023, in early 2023. So in late 2023. And that's a new situation that this area looks completely different to the way it looked before the war started. Some of these villages that were used by Hezbollah in order to serve as a launching pad for ground operations against Israel do not exist anymore. And the blame for that is being directed by the Lebanese government and by some even Shiites. And Eran just wrote a piece about it, how there's a resentment towards Hezbollah within the Shiite community in Lebanon, and it's growing. And we saw even some cases in which Hezbollah wanted to place some weapons inside the villages in the south, where the Shiite people in these villages came against it and had some violent exchange with the Hezbollah people that were trying to bring these weapons. So we are in a totally different situation, and this is worrying the Iranians to the point that they are afraid that they are going to lose Hezbollah. That's why they decided to intervene. They understood that if Israel is going to get the green light to operate in the Dahia, then there's not going to be any refuge for Hezbollah. And it's not a sign of strength that they did it. They did it because of weakness, because of worrying. And that's and the final result is we came back to where we started. We can operate in southern Lebanon and other places, but we have to be cautious before we operate in the Dahia, and we shall operate in the Dahia only if they are going to attack targets within Israel proper. That's where we stand, and it's still out of the jury is still out of whether this was a successful operation or not. We shall have to wait a little bit. But if we are going to be able to attack the Dahia without worrying about an Iranian retaliation, if Hezbollah attacks our villages, our communities, then we have gained considerable success in this exchange that focused on the Lebanese issue. And the wider issue of what's going to happen with Iran, as I said, the question is to what extent we are going to be able to get what we want in the context of the nuclear file. The other files probably are less on the agenda right now. And this is a big sorrow for Israel. We had higher expectations. And I agree with Gabi that if there's going to be an opportunity to resume the attacks on the Iranian infrastructure, we should focus on the economic infrastructure, because the logic that kept us from doing that was that we are keeping an option for the new government of Iran to be able to get a functioning economy. But this new government of Iran is not in the offing right now. So we have to redraw our plans and attack these facilities. And by the way, the interesting thing about it is that we attacked the petrochemical facilities on day 40 of the original war. And when we started the next stage yesterday, we started with the petrochemical factories. So definitely what we had in mind was to go from there to more very sensitive components of the Iranian economy. And the Iranians know that. And that's why the Iranians were rushing to the Americans, telling them, okay, let's stop here. Because they wanted to avoid themselves from being hit heavily by Israel if the war would continue. And that's where we stand. The Iranians are in a very problematic situation. So is the United States, by the way. Everybody is in a complicated situation, but the problems of the Iranians are much bigger than anybody else. Because as long as the blockade stays in place, it's very difficult for the Iranians to keep the economy going. And at one point, if we have enough patience, this is going to have an impact not only on the general economy of Iran, but also on the regime economy. I highly suggest that if you want to look into this deeper, there's an excellent article on JISS website by Dr. Retired Brigadier General Sasson Haddad, who used to be the financial advisor to the Minister of Defense, about the regime economy and the state economy, and how it is so important to reach the state where you are affecting the regime economy and not only the state economy. And we are heading in this direction. So we have to be patient and resilient in order to get there. And the Iranians know that they are under pressure. That's why Trump believes, nobody here is an expert on Trump, but I think this is why Trump believes that we are getting closer to the option of having a deal with the Iranians, because the pressure that's being put on them through the blockade is going to gain to yield some fruits as time goes by. He speaks about 2 weeks, but he has spoken about 2 weeks for so many times already. So everything in him, when he speaks about time, is always within 2 weeks. So I don't know how long is those 2 weeks actually. Anyhow, this is what I think about the situation, and we'll see what's going to happen in Lebanon, whether the Iranians are going to take action, or whether Hezbollah is going to attack our villages. And so far they have not yet done it, but they might. And whether the Israeli retaliation is going to cause another attempt by the Iranians to deter us from doing that. And if not, what does that mean for the longer range and the ability to separate between Iran and Lebanon? I think there is a chance of doing that. Questions, if anybody has. See, there's one on the chat. What's that? No. Any questions? Anybody, you can unmute yourself if you would like to ask a question. We were so clear. Okay.
I think you did the three of you, the 1, 2, 3, the four of you did an outstanding job. We had a really nice rollout of participants. I want to thank Robert Gregory of AJA, Australian Jewish Association, with whom we often partner, who advised his database of this excellent event. I want to thank Yaakov and Eran and Gabi and Yossi for making yourselves available at very short notice. And this is the first report, discussion, webinar on this subject that's taken place here, and we very much appreciate it. Listen, guys, while I've got you on the phone, I got you online, I'd just like to mention that to operate the Jerusalem Institute is quite a substantial financial outlay. And I'm currently speaking to people about making contributions towards that. Feel free to be in contact with me. Even if I'm traveling to Israel or in Israel or whatever, I'm accessible on WhatsApp online. And Adi will send you all my email and telephone number so people can make contact. We do really appreciate whatever contribution you can make so that the messages that come out of JISS are the ones that are heard by government and government departments and media and overseas interests to get a balanced perspective of what's taking place. So if there are no questions, Yossi, I think we'll
call it a day.
We'll call it a day. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Adi. Toda rabah. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
very much, everybody.
Erev Tov.